welcome to this review of my Alphameric 116K keyboard. This was a donation from a viewer, thanks again mate. I still have no idea what computer it came with, but considering it doesn't have a case and was built in 1980, I'm going to guess it was from a monoblock, which is a type of computer which has the keyboard built into the workstation, so the whole system formed a single unit. This style of computer was pretty common at the time. Alphameric is an obscure keyboard manufacturer who is known for a proprietary foam and foil switch that looks almost identical to Keytronic's version. It appears to be quite rare, but it has been reported previously. I haven't tried those out, but considering how bad the Keytronic version is, I don't hold high hopes for the Alphameric version. However, it now appears that there is an older, unreported version of these switches as well, which is this taller version. Presumably, the shorter height Alphameric foam and foil version was a redesign to comply with the DIN standard that required keyboards to not be taller than 0.725 inches, or 18.4 millimeters in non-gobbledygook, off the top of a desk. Keytronic and virtually every other company redesigned their switches to comply with this standard in the early 80s, hence why so many switch designs like Cherry MX and Alps SKCM hail from this era. These older switches are definitely much too tall to be compatible with this DIN standard, and they're mounted in a very thick metal mounting plate, which provides the majority of the keyboard's heft, which, at as much as 2.1 kilos, is considerable. Or, if you prefer the imperial system, 2 stones, 15 pebbles, and 12 grains of barley. I mean, this thing weighs more than an IBM Model M, and it doesn't even have a case. It uses blockers for the positions that are not in use, which suggests the plate was communal to several other models or variations that had a different button layout. It was kinda dirty when I got it, and the clips that hold the spacebar stabilizers have broken off, so you have to hit it in the middle or it won't go down properly. But the plate doesn't have any rust on it whatsoever, and after some cleaning it's a lot fresher, and I think it looks really nice now. In fact, with a black metal case around it, I suspect it'd be a hell of a looker. Of course, the look is mostly determined by the keycaps, which are thin uniprofile ABS. The alpha keys appear to be engraved and then infilled, although it's virtually impossible to feel the lettering, unlike all other engraved legends I've ever seen. The special keys are all double shot though. Curiously, the single unit keys are also much shinier and smoother than the big ones, but the shininess is so even across the board that I doubt it comes from just wear alone. Besides, there was very little finger grime present on the keyboard. By the way, they also use a weird angling system to tilt the keycaps, and they clip onto the sliders. The caps also look absolutely awesome. The legends are in the center right rather than the top left, but they have these neat secondary and tertiary, sometimes even quaternary, Greek upper and lowercase symbol sets, as well as maths operators on them. Really cool stuff. As you would expect of something so old, it has some pretty weird legends on it as well, such as super and sub buttons. There are some blanks, a close-up key, end job, table mode, and print go. It's strange, but absolutely gorgeous overall. At the back of the keyboard, among the telltale capacitive pads, is a sticker showing it was made by, or at least for, Alphameric at Woking, Surrey in the United Kingdom, with a date code from July of 1980, making it one of my oldest keyboards. The somewhat striking black and red color scheme is reminiscent of BBC keyboards from the early 80s, such as the BBC Micro and BBC Master. I have absolutely no idea if this keyboard was perhaps also made for some model of BBC or Acorn computer, or whether it was just a fashion thing of the time. It came with a few datasheets that show some of the keyboard's technical specifications. Apparently it runs at 9600 baud at odd parity in 8-bit mode, and there's also an enclosed list of scan codes it uses for the special keys. Furthermore, it shows the assignment of the 20-pin pinout, which includes a separate pin for each bit, and 2 pins for 5 volts, as well as a pin for 12 volts, which is unusual. After the IBM personal computer was released in August of 1981, many standalone keyboards instead started using the 5-pin DIN plug and XT protocol, but this thing hails from an era in which connectors and protocols hadn't really been standardized. That said, I've seen other pre-PC keyboards with this style of connector too. Now, because of this weird connector, and doubtlessly it has a weird protocol as well, I can't use it on my computer at the moment, and perhaps that's for the best too, as the switches aren't that great, like most foam and foil designs really. Of course, it's over 35 years old, and it wasn't exactly spotless, so that's not going to help the key feel. And along those lines, the slight binding on off-center key presses that the keyboard exhibits is probably due to dirt and dust, but it's just a curiously rough-feeling, stiff linear switch overall. Most notably, however, there is a complete lack of mushiness, which is otherwise almost endemic to foam and foil switches. Later, I found out why this is probably the case. If you take a keycap off, you can see that the slider is actually a two-piece design, i.e. the plunger moves separately from the actuator, so I suspect that it's this indirect rather than direct pressing on the foam pad when you press a key that's responsible for the key feel not being spongy, despite literally typing on actual sponges. On this particular design, you can even look between the actuators and the sensing pads as the mounting plate is pillared to the PCB. This was not that uncommon on old boards, particularly designs with really tall switches, before the DIN norm, often took up so much space that they had to resort to this kind of construction to keep everything in place. Now, in some cases, a lack of mushiness in foam and foil switches can be due to the foam either shrinking or decomposing, but the foam still appears very much intact on this board, as you can see between the plates, and the pads are very thick on these switches, by the way. So maybe it's also because you really only compress these big pads a little bit that the key feel is firmer, or maybe the foam just puts up very little resistance. By the way, one of the plungers is still stuck in the barrel plate, as you can see. The top part must have broken off at some point, but the plunger is still there because of the brass retaining ring that otherwise keeps the switches anchored to the bottom of the plate. Furthermore, despite having an almost overpowering amount of plate ping, surely not helped by the lack of a case, the sound the switches make is pretty good though. It's very dense and full, almost as if the entire switch was made out of hardwood or something. It reminds me a bit of my lubed high-tech 725 keyboard. It's delightful. Even just raking your fingers across the key tops makes a satisfying sound. Anyway, overall this is a very interesting keyboard, an intriguing specimen, and quite the looker too. I think a modern spherical keycap set in black and red with legends like this would be pretty cool. Maybe SA Alphameric? I'd buy it. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.